Right now, the cost of groceries is skyrocketing. Inflation is bleeding families dry, and modern gardeners are panicking because they cannot afford $40 bags of synthetic fertilizer. But in 1933, at the absolute height of the Great Depression, a 67-year-old woman living in the Dust Bowl of Oklahoma managed to feed 8 family members every single day. She had no supermarket, she had no chemical fertilizers, she had absolutely $0 in cash. She survived because she utilized lost biological cheat codes that turned a dead, dry plot of dirt into a high-calorie survival engine. Before we resurrect these lost blueprints, I want to give a massive shout-out to one of our subscribers down in the comments who recently asked, "How do I grow enough food to survive when I have absolutely zero money to spend on garden supplies?" This video is exactly for you. The industrial agricultural system wants you to believe that growing food requires expensive drip lines and weekly trips to the garden center. Today, we are breaking that lie. I am going to show you the forgotten mechanics of trench composting and the $0 calorie stack. Also, giving shouts to our loving subscribers Marie, Susie, Brockman, Jay French, Juan, Kuhn, and all of you watching from differently continents. We are going to build a high-yield, off-grid garden that feeds your family for free. Welcome back to the channel. Let's build your survival engine. The trench composting scam. If you want to survive without spending money, you have to stop throwing your organic waste into a plastic compost bin at the edge of your yard. Modern gardening channels tell you to build a fancy compost pile, turn it with a pitchfork for 6 months, and then carry it back to your garden. That is a massive waste of human energy, and during a crisis, you cannot afford to waste calories. Furthermore, when a compost pile sits above ground, the sun evaporates the nitrogen, and the wind blows the carbon away. You are losing 40% of the biological value to the atmosphere. In 1933, survivalists didn't use compost bins. They used the trench composting engine. They bypassed the waiting period entirely and injected the raw fuel directly into the root zone. The underground injection protocol. Here is the exact mechanical execution to build this zero-cost fertilizer system this weekend. Step 1. The excavation. Do not till your entire yard. Take a shovel and dig a single, narrow trench exactly 12 inches deep right down the center of your garden bed. Step 2. The raw biomass. Take every single piece of free organic waste you can find. Potato peels, coffee grounds, crushed eggshells, dead leaves, and grass clippings. Dump it directly into the bottom of that 12-inch trench. You do not need to wait for it to break down. You want it raw. Step 3. The biological seal. Cover that trench back up with the dirt you just removed. You have just created an underground biological reactor. Because the rotting biomass is buried deep underground, the moisture cannot evaporate. The nitrogen is permanently trapped in the soil. Within days, thousands of native earthworms will detect the rotting food and migrate to your trench, leaving behind pure, highly concentrated worm castings, the most powerful natural fertilizer on planet Earth. Step 4. The offset planting. You do not plant your seeds directly on top of the trench. The rotting process generates heat, which can burn tiny seeds. Instead, you plant your heavy-feeding survival crops, like tomatoes, squash, and potatoes, exactly 6 inches to the left and right of the trench. As those plants grow, their roots will naturally sense the massive pocket of nutrients and water trapped in the center. The roots will aggressively dive sideways into the trench, plugging directly into an infinite, slow-drip supply of pure nitrogen and water. You never buy fertilizer. You never turn a compost pile. You let the earthworms do the mechanical labor for you.
the calorie illusion. If you want to survive a financial collapse, you have to stop gardening for aesthetics and start gardening for mathematics. The biggest mistake modern beginners make is filling their expensive raised beds with lettuce, radishes, and spinach.
These crops grow fast and look beautiful on Instagram, but biologically, they are 95% water. If you feed your family nothing but a massive bowl of lettuce, they will still starve to death. There are 0 dense calories in a salad. In 1933, survivalists didn't waste time on water-weight crops. They focused entirely on the heavy carbs. To build a true survival engine, your garden must be dominated by winter squash, potatoes, corn, and dry beans. These are heavy, starchy, calorie-dense carbohydrates that can be stored in a root cellar or a dark cabinet for up to 12 months without refrigeration. But you do not plant them in neat, separate little rows. That wastes space and requires fertilizer. Instead, we are going to use a mechanical, biological protocol to stack them vertically. This is the $0 Calorie Stack, an ancient indigenous agricultural system perfected by Native Americans and heavily utilized during the Depression. It is commonly known as the Three Sisters method, but we are going to supercharge it by placing it directly over the trench. Here is the exact layout. First, you plant your corn directly over the edges of the rotting trench. The corn is a massive nitrogen feeder, and it will aggressively drink from the rotting biomass below. As it grows tall, the thick stalk becomes a free, living vertical trellis. You do not need to buy expensive wooden stakes or metal cages. Second, once the corn is 6 inches tall, you plant pole beans exactly 2 inches away from the corn stalk. The beans will naturally wrap around the corn and climb it toward the sun. But the beans do something miraculous. They are nitrogen fixers. They physically pull invisible nitrogen gas out of the atmosphere and inject it directly into the soil, feeding the corn roots for free. Third, you plant heavy winter squash or pumpkins in the empty spaces between the corn. The squash vines will aggressively crawl across the bare dirt. Their massive, umbrella-like leaves will create a thick, living canopy over the ground. This canopy physically blocks the sun from hitting the dirt. It drops the soil temperature by 10 degrees and stops water evaporation completely. It is a living, zero-cost mulch. The weeds cannot grow because the sun cannot reach them. You have just built an automated, self-fertilizing, self-watering, weed-proof jungle of dense carbohydrates in a tiny footprint. The infinite seed loop. There is one final step to making this a true $0 system. If you build the trench and you build the calorie stack, but you still drive to the garden center every spring to buy $5 packets of seeds, your system is broken. You are still dependent on the industrial supply chain. A true producer operates on a closed biological loop. At the end of your harvest, you never eat your biggest, heaviest tomato, squash, or bean pod. You let the absolute best fruit of the year stay on the vine until it is overripe and begins to shrivel. You slice it open, scrape out the seeds, wash them, and let them dry on a paper towel in a dark room for 2 weeks. Put those dry seeds in a cheap paper envelope and store them in a cool drawer. Those seeds carry the exact genetic code of a plant that survived your specific soil, your specific climate, and your specific trench system. When you plant them the next year, they will grow faster and yield heavier than any generic seed you buy from a store. You execute this loop, and you will never spend another dollar on seeds for the rest of your life. Stop buying your survival. The 1930s taught us a brutal lesson. The systems we rely on are fragile. When the grocery store shelves go empty and the garden centers close their doors, you cannot eat money. But if you understand the physics of dry farming, the underground chemistry of trench composting, and the biology of the calorie stack, you become untouchable. You stop being a consumer, you become a producer. If you are ready to stop bleeding money and start building a survival engine that feeds your family for exactly $0, hit that subscribe button and leave a comment down below telling me what you are planning this spring. I read every single one. I'm your favorite gardener that staying away from me would really be bad to your gardens. Stop buying your survival. Build the machine, and I'll see you in the next one.